Okay, we are live. So welcome to edition 3 of Down on the Korner. We are happy to have with us tonight the current pitching staff for Wally Backman's Long Island Ducks. He played for 6 Major League Baseball teams. He actually had the most starts as a New York Met, as well as the most wins as a New York Met. He also was the post-game analysis for SNY here in New York. It is a pleasure to welcome the pride of Brooklyn, Nelson Figueroa, to Down on the Korner, edition 3. And as well, it's great to welcome all of you guys here. This is what we want, and we're going to open it up later. You guys can ask Figgy some questions and stuff. Basically, we figured tonight we wanted to touch on a couple of things. The first thing, Nelson, as long as we have you, let's start and talk about, and let me just also introduce the other members of KINER'S.com. They're on the call: AJ Carter, Noah Glickman, and Charlie Sutton with us tonight. As you know, we rotate different hosts, so they're all with us as well. So Nelson, let's start with the new rules. As a pitching coach with the Ducks and a guy in the Atlantic League where some of these rules were already, instilled, what are some of the things pitchers would have to worry about this coming season and adjust to with these new rules?
Well, of course, the pitch clock is one of them. Last year was my first year with the Atlantic League, and we didn't have the pitch clock for whatever reason. We had it the year before, and then they tried using it in minor league baseball throughout AA and AAA, just trying it out. Yes, it makes the game quicker. I'm still not a fan of it. I don't care. Baseball is a game that has to be played on its own, at its own tempo. Those big moments aren't to be forced. I don't like the fact that you can get a strikeout for a hitter not being what an umpire declares engaged, and that guy is now a strikeout victim. Or even for yourself as a pitcher, you get a no pitch called or a balk called, like Scherzer dealt with the other day. So he had fun with it the first time around. You saw the second time around wasn't so fun when there was a nine-run barrage on him on weekly hit balls, and everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and it all became because of that then the pitch clock, which I don't know. I still think that it's may not be implemented, or it's definitely going to be adapted where they're going to maybe put some more time on it. The WBC is kind of putting a hindrance in that right now.
So Nelson, who has the greatest benefit or the greatest harm from the pitch clock? Is it the pitcher who has to throw within 15 seconds, 20 seconds, whatever, or the hitter who can't step out, readjust the batting gloves, take 3 swings and get back in? It seems to me that the new speed up rules will hurt the hitter more than it will the pitcher.
Oh, no doubt. It definitely will hurt the hitter more than it will hurt the pitcher. See, hitting is timing, and pitching is the art of disrupting that timing, right? And so that, to me, in itself, now you're forcing these hitters to be on that clock as well. It was one thing in the beginning. I remember when they first started shortening up where you couldn't walk around, you had to have, be in the box at all times. With David Ortiz would talk about it, where he's like, I need a few seconds after I just got embarrassed by a nasty slider and trying to reshuffle myself and rethink what will he throw me here. It might take me a few seconds more occasionally, but to be forced to do something like that, and that's literally what it is. It's forcing these guys to do it. I get it. You see a lot of them say that, they like it because it speeds up the tempo of the game. I don't think they want to rock the boat just yet and say that they don't like it. It's a work in progress. And the advantage is definitely for the pitcher. I think that was one of the things that myself, when I had Rick Peterson and I got to the Mets, we worked on tempo control. We worked on, quick pitching. We worked on, slide stepping with nobody on to force the hitter to be out of his rhythm. So I think this is another way that all throughout baseball, you're going to see some hitters that are definitely going to be uncomfortable and definitely going to be complaining about this.
So it's interesting, and we talked about this last week with Hojo, and I took some grief on social media for a comment I made, and you just said it, that baseball has, always never had a clock, never had a limit, but, to me, it was always that internal clock. Okay. Mm-hmm. There was a certain pace. You as a pitcher, you would dictate that in a sense. And then we got to the Chuck Knobloch era, or even a little before that. For those of you that are too young in the room, look it up. Mike Hargrove. It would just be forever in between pitches. But the thing I was thinking about is, we went from the 60s and 70s where guys just ate up innings, complete games left and right. And these games were done in 2 hours and 10 minutes. and there were no injuries. Now I'm wondering, maybe let's see before we all complain about this. Let's see if injuries go down too, because you get loose, you start pumping pitches in there, you're in a rhythm. All of a sudden, now you got three batters that just are just stalling and in and out, and now your body starts to cool down a little. Am I just grasping at straws, or is there anything to that?
No, that's absolutely gamesmanship. That's a part of the game within the game. That's something that a manager used to dictate. I've had it several times in my career where I like to work quick. I like to force the action. I like to keep both my defense and the hitter on his toes. Never knowing what I'm going to throw, I might use a slide step with a breaking ball. I might hold back a lot longer. Maybe they're thinking I'm going to throw a fastball by getting more momentum, and I might throw even slower curveball. So that, to me, is where the chess game of a manager dictating, hey, listen, this guy likes to work quick, step out a bunch in the first inning. Let's rattle him. Let's get him out of his element. That's been done for years. I think it's few and far between the Chuck Knoblauchs and the Mark Hargroves where they take all that time. It's not every guy. There are a couple of those guys. So you know what? Get on top of them. Let them know they need to quicken up their pace. Umpires, even in Little League, there's an umpire who's clapping his hands and saying, let's go. We got 2 hours to get through this game, and we're going to make sure we get through at least 5 innings. They're going to want these kids to not walk around and do all those things. And that's at the lower level, right? But umpire can control the tempo of the game. So you give the umpire that little extra bit of power to let the hitter know, hey, you know what, you're taking a little bit too much time. Hitter has to do it. You know what? Fine him, hit him in the pocketbook. And when everybody says, oh, they make too much money, la, da, da, da. Listen, you know why you never hear NBA players complain about officials and NFL players? Because how big are the fines? $25,000 to $50,000 when you say something wrong. Let's put $5,000 if you take more than 30 seconds. Have somebody clocking it. I don't care about that, but not at the field where it's a shot clock and you're gonna have fans counting down. How about that? Like in some of those arenas in college basketball where they count down to a fake time and the guy throws up a shot with like 5 seconds left. That's going to happen. That's going to happen. Guy's going to be counting, and this poor hitter's going to be looking for the clock, and he's going to get struck out because he's got so much going on. I just think it's just asking for a lot of trouble.
Well, here is the beauty immediately of what we're trying to do here. In the KINER'S Corner Facebook group, where there's lots of conversations going back and forth, it's with the live component of the show, because I notice in the Zoom room, we have a major league player, a guy who played for the Mets, but now, maybe can give some opposition to you, Figgy, because we have Ryan Thompson in the room, a former Met who's a hitter. So Ryan, as long as you're in, I'm just going to bring you in here. I mean, you weren't a guy who would step out like continuously back and forth. I mean, as a hitter, do you need that time to get out of the box? And what's your opinion of the speed up rule?
I don't think it's so much. What's up, Figgy? How are you? How's everybody?
What's up, brother? Good to see you.
You too, likewise. I don't think it's so much an advantage either way. I think it's going to be good for the game, honestly. Guys, I think it's more of for me, it would be take a guy like Nomar Garciaparra. He used to do the gloves, Manny, all those guys. It's a quirky thing that hitters have. That we do. It's kind of like a pitcher when you guys go behind the mound and grab the rosin back 50,000 times, fix your hat and get your little dookie duke on the visor you had to put on the ball, all that good stuff. And, I think what it does is people want to they're trying to try new maneuvers to speed the game up. And I think that the fan base's participation in this is going to be what's going to be a deciding factor in the long run. I think if the fans like it, MLB will stick with it more so than if the fans don't like it.
The one thing that to me seems like it will have the most effect is the limiting number of pickoff throws that a pitcher can make. So both as a runner, as a pitcher, as a pitching coach, what do you teach now? You teach them about picking off, you throw, you go back, you get a rhythm to try and catch a runner off, or runner's trying to get a pitcher's motion so he can steal a base. To me, that seems to be the biggest potential change in the way the game is played. What do each of you think, and how do you think it'll play out as the season goes?
Well, I'm very big, of course, on holding runners on and being able to mix up your moves over there. And again, now you have the time clock, so this pitcher has to either deliver the ball or pick off before that time clock goes down. So you can watch that as a runner. Getting off the base, and after 2 times he can't pick over without picking you off. So you can't get that big of a lead. because he can pick you off still. So I think there's ways that it's still going to police itself. I think the new bases, the 18-inch bases, where now you have a half a foot advantage in between, that's going to be something that's going to encourage more base running. That's what we saw in the Atlantic League, because now the guys that could steal bases and knew how to steal bases said they were so much more comfortable being able to take off. We're seeing a lot of these plays, they're so close, they're bang, bang. And in HD, we're seeing them, by a millimeter, this guy is out. Now you're encouraged. You have an extra 6 inches. That makes a huge difference for a base runner and a guy who knows how to steal bases. So I love that. I love that element of the game. And then with the lack of shifting, that's another big thing. We're now hitting, not necessarily hitting runs, but there's more room for hits to get through. You're going to be seeing more first to thirds. You're going to see guys, being more aggressive on the base path. That part of the game, I absolutely love. So I understand in a way, because they're looking to, increase scoring, but at the same time, you're looking to speed up the game. So there's almost, I think it's like a control system to, not sit around and add more time to the game, because there should be more runs scored, because there should be more offense with the lack of the shift. That's the biggest thing I think we'll see in the change in baseball this year.
So what is that new
from a
rule?
base
Is
runner?
it 3 pitches, right? Is that
Yeah.
correct?
It's 3 pickoff attempts. So 2 pickoff attempts after 2. The third one, if he's not picked off, then
that is
he
insane
gets
to me.
base.
That one is
right?
That rule. That is totally insane to me. I think that's not going to go over too well. Personally, we'll see how that one fares as the season progresses.
I mean, there's so few guys that run, though. There's so few guys that run in today's game. Like, you can count it on your hand. Even though, like, the Mets last year, their team speed was increased and they tried to do more running. You had Marte, you have Nimmo, you have those McNeil, you have those kind of guys that can steal you bases. Lindor, so you would think they would hopefully take advantage of that. But, there are teams that aren't built that way. The teams that most of baseball doesn't care about. They don't care about bunting anymore. They don't care about stealing bases. They're trying to go with the one of the 3 true outcomes.
Well, that's because of analytics, and because when I was down in spring training, and whoever was on the show last week, I asked Nimmo about it. It's actually on our website in the videos. But Nimmo said that analytically, unless you are an 80% base stealer, you're hurting the team. We spoke to Hojo last week, and he felt that was nonsense because he said, you know what, just the threat of a stolen base changes dynamics. You get the second baseman leaning, you get a shortstop. So he says you can't. Analytics are all well and good, but there are certain things that happen in a game that you can't quantify. Like the guy leaning, to try and get over and make, or a guy holding a guy on because of the threat of the steal opens up holes, and it's a base hit, but no one realizes because he's holding the runner on. That doesn't go into analytics anywhere. So I agree with you. And unfortunately, analytics, same thing, like the 3 true outcomes, the bunt is gone now too. It's a different game, but we still always love it. And that's one of the other things we wanted to talk about tonight is how we became Met fans. And Figgy, for you, I mean, you grew up a Met fan and you end up going to play for the team. So why don't you first share with how you became a Met fan, why you were a Met fan?
I was born into being a Met fan. My mom and dad, everything was blue and orange. Brooklyn, New York is a long way away from the Bronx. I had more family in Queens than the Bronx. I actually remember my dad, as I was getting, older and enough to understand, he said that the Mets players were blue collar. They were hard workers. They were hard nosed. They played the game the right way, and whether they won or lost, we loved them because they always gave 110%. And that's what you wanted from those players. Where the Yankee players, it was the Steinbrenner era where they bought the best hitter and pitcher every year from every other team and just continued to put together, back then, what was the evil empire, although some people are calling, this team the new evil empire. But it was an interesting time to realize that as you're growing up and you're starting to see like the difference in players. The Mets kind of always got those superstar players at the end of their career, at the twilight of their career. I swear, if you go down the list of players and you could put together almost like a Hall of Fame team that you never knew played for the Mets, and you see them in a Met uniform, you're like, where was I during this time? But it's one of those things where the Mets kind of got those guys too late in their careers, and you were excited, but you're like, oh my God, 8 years ago, this would have been the best signing ever. So, and now you're starting to see, the Mets are kind of doing things a little bit differently. They're opening up the pocketbook and really spending the money where they need to spend it. They're willing to do that. They're actually investing in the fan base as well, because they realize that Met fans have been longing for more than just an appearance in the World Series. It's been far too long, and I think one of the biggest things for me as a Met fan, and then all of a sudden becoming a Met, I loved I still love putting on that Met uniform. I still get chills when I see my name alongside Dwight Gooden's and Darryl Strawberry's, when I was coming up in the minor leagues and you win Player of the Year and they put your little name on a plaque next to those guys. And now getting to know those guys and being able to reach out to them and talk to them. And it's funny because occasionally Dwight Gooden will send me a text whenever it's on this day, Dwight Gooden hit a home run. That's what he sends me. At 8 o'clock in the morning, he'll send me a video of him hitting a home run. And I wake up and I'm like, dude, not today. I don't really need to see this, okay? But I think that's my biggest thrill, of course, is loving these players as a kid. And then having some of them as coaches, like Hojo was my hitting coach when I came up. My first spring training, I wore Dwight Gooden's pants and Howard Johnson's jersey. So that in itself, right there, as a kid from Brooklyn, if I had never played in the big leagues, I at least had that. So to go on and put on the jersey and have some part of the team history has always been, a dream come true for me.
So before we go and get everyone else who's in the room, how they become Met fans, because we want that interaction, we want to get to know you as well. But since we do have, Figgy here as well as Ryan Thompson, if you guys have questions, because that's what we essentially want to do during the season, we want give and take. If you have a question, just in the bottom, the reactions, you hit it and you can raise your hand. And we'll call on you. We'll ask you to unmute. And it doesn't have to be about fandom. It could be about the new rules. It could be about the slew of Met injuries on the pitching staff and why, you think there are so many injuries. If you're not, technologically savvy and you just want to really just raise your hand, you can do that too. That works also. So someone has to have a question, Michael, Freedy, somebody, Steve. Let's see. I think I just saw Steve Ray. No, Michael did. So we'll go with Michael first. Go ahead, Michael. Ask your question.
It's not a question. I just wanted to give a different fan perspective. I think part of the problem with the new rules is blamed on us. I mean, when I was growing up and going to ball games, you went and you had your choice of a hot dog, a hamburger, and a soda. I mean, that was it. And you got a scorecard and you paid attention to the game. If you whined about it and complained, your father took you home. I mean, it was just that simple. So your choice was to pay attention to what was going on in the field. There was no stadium experience. The stadium experience was going to the bathroom. I mean, that's the only experience you got, that and buying food. So you paid attention to what was going on in the field. Now, they don't pay attention. There's so much going on behind them. There's so much going on around them. And I hate to say this, but the damn cell phones are part of the problem. Take the cell phones away from the kids. Kids complain, you take them home. I mean, that's what it's got to be. You got to pay attention to what's going on the field. That's the beauty of this game, is watching this game play out.
I agree with him 1,000,000% when it comes to, if you're going to the game for the fan experience the game. Do not go there with a cell phone and the tap. Oh, give him his iPad. Let him sit and watch it on his iPad. That is not the reason you spent, the absorbent amount of money to go and be there at the game. And you get done with the game, you're like, hey, how was the game? I don't know. I was on my iPad the whole time, like playing Minecraft. That to me is really one of the biggest issues, is that, yes, everybody wants Wi-Fi and they want the 5G and now 10G. You know what? Shut all that down. Make it an experience where you're coming to the game to watch the game, interact with the other fans, interact as a part of the home team, and be that 10th player, be that element that, no other team has. Instead of being hoping that, they put up all that netting for the safety of the fans. And it's amazing how many times you see the ball hit where the person's just sitting there with their head down on their cell phone the whole time. Yeah. Or even if they're at the game and they're sitting at great seats behind home plate, what are they doing the whole time? Waving because they were watching it on TV on their phone so they could see themselves wave. So I agree with Mike Tully, by the way. I need you to catch this year again. I need more guys like Tully with my fantasy camp teams.
Tully's been working at shortstop, by the way.
Oh God, I'll put him wherever he wants to play. All I know is as long as he can stand up, he's going to be able to keep going. That's all I care.
Well, Michael's right, but you know what though, Michael, you're right, because I took my kids, my three boys, to a Cubs game when Barry was going for the home run title, and we're there. I think it was Memorial Day weekend or something like that. In probably the third or fourth inning, you thinking your dad being an ex-major leaguer, you would endure the game. By the third or fourth inning, my kids were like looking at popcorn. Dad, can we go? It's too hot. Can we go back to the hotel, get in the pool? And it's kind of like what you said. I just said, okay, you know what? I'm not going to waste our time. I took them, put them in the truck, and went on back to the hotel. I think it comes down to a lot of the perspective that we have on the game today, you know, and I think if we can continue as even as fans, I think I endured myself to fans, especially Mets fans. I had a lot of good, you guys were tremendous fans, by the way. Just wanted to put that out there. Kudos to you. And I think it's the upbringing that we have now, where the game has changed, Figgy, so much in the household. And you don't see dads, you don't see as much of the camaraderie where dads bring their kids to the ballpark and they kind of go through that regimen of, this is a scorecard and this is what it's for and this is what the game is meant to be. And you don't they're not educated, because you said the cell phones and all the other distractions that are out there. And I think that's an important part that we need to, you know, if we could focus somewhat and get that back, it would make the game better.
I'll go one step further. All right. Let's look at the professional level. I mean, I'm in the locker room post game. Guys are, you know, posting stuff on there. Professional players after a game or in the locker room years ago, you guys would sit in that locker room as a team and you talk about things that went on in the game. These guys are now on their Instagram, whether they're on their cell phones after a game, which boggles my mind. I don't know if you see it much. I don't know if you saw it with the Ferry Hawks much last year, Nelson. But that's a big thing too.
Yeah, we actually Fonzie, Eduardo Alfonso was the manager with me, and he actually had a meeting and said, listen, once you get to the ballpark, he's like, I'll allow it till after BP. After BP is over, check in with your family, make sure everything's okay. And unless you have an emergency, I don't want to see your cell phone in your hand again until the game is over. And even then, after the food was eaten. And Fonzie actually said that to the guys. And it was remarkable, because we did have a turnaround in the second half, and we played really, really well in the second half because the focus was there. You know, this isn't just a place to come and hang out. This was a place to, you know, play the game and try to get back to organized baseball and try to impress somebody and try to impress scouts. And the only way to do that is to play winning baseball, because scouts aren't going around watching a team that's 1-18. I could tell you that because we experienced that. And at the same time, you want to be able to, as a coach who had to endure, you know, it wasn't easy for me to make it to the big leagues. It was even harder for me to keep making it to the big leagues. But the reason I did that is because I put the work in, and I had to, there are sacrifices that are made along the way. So having my Instagram account have so many followers, I could care less. You look at my Instagram right now, and I still think I have one post. It's my Little League picture of me, and nothing has been posted since then. I just use it to do interviews on Instagram Live. So that's not what I've ever been about, is looking for the attention in that way. You know what was the coolest part is, I tell people this all the time, and Ryan, I think you could speak to it as well. When you play winter ball and you play overseas, when you come back into customs and they ask you, you know, reason for your trip, business or pleasure, and you're like, business. And like, oh, what's your business? I'm a professional baseball player. Yeah. And their face is like, what? Get out of here. Like, no. And you're like, yeah. How long you been down there? You know, the season was 3 months. How'd you guys do? We won the championship. You know, it's just a great feeling. Like, this is something that I said since I was a little kid. I wanted to be a professional baseball player. I had no idea about the ups and downs. I had no idea about the lack of ability that you have to control the matter. To me, it was, I said I was going to do it. I'm going to do it. This is what I'm going to do. And 30 years later, you know, I'm looking at kids from my high school. Yeah, I said 30 years. God, isn't that amazing? 30 years later, I'm looking at kids in my high school. I know it. Hey, Ryan, you telling me. I look at it now, and I'm looking at these kids, and I'm like, man, there hasn't been another guy. It was Lee Mazzilli, then myself, and there hasn't been another guy out of Lincoln High School. And they've had great athletes. And I realize how blessed I am that I had that opportunity and I made the most of it. But I can't imagine the distracting factors that it is, because I train kids now. And first thing is, because of the video game, or because, you know, their dad spends a lot of money on lessons, they feel like they should be 100% better and throwing 90 miles an hour at 12 years old. It doesn't work that way. You have to put in the work. You have to continue to put in the work. You have to have all the repetitions. You have to deal with adversity. You have to have success and failure. There's going to be that in any great story of any athlete. It's not always about the 100% successes. It's how he either came from failure or went through failure and came back to succeed again. We love those stories.
So it's interesting. I want to go old school, because I know Steve's got his hand up. I know Freddie's got his hand up. I know Noah's got his hand up. But I got to love Ginny doing old school, putting her hand really
Ginny!
up. So we're going right to Ginny. Go ahead, Ginny. Got on mute first. There we go.
I did. Hey, Figgy, nice to see you, buddy.
Always good to see you.
I just want to go back to what you said earlier about the fan base when the Mets were started. Like you, I grew up as a Brooklyn Dodger fan with my dad. And then I met my husband. He was a Giant fan. And both the Dodgers and the Giants moved to California. So we went to one Yankee game. Never again. The fans are brutal. They were nasty. They were throwing things at Roger Maris on the field because I watched them do it. They didn't want him to beat Mickey Mantle's record. So the Mets were born, and we started going to those games. And let me tell you about fan base. There was nothing like it in those days. People stood, they cheered whether the team won or lost. It was like one big happy family. And I raised my kids to be Mets fans. And that's it. I love the Mets, and I'm so happy that you were with them for a while.
Thank you. You know, Jenny's one of the fantastic people who are with the Mets Port St. Lucie Booster Club, and because of people like her who have that dedication and have that passion for the game and for the blue and orange, you know, to see these young kids come up through the system, you know, they can always point back to people who helped out, like Ginny and like Dora. You guys are amazing. I think watching you guys, what you do every year for these players is truly special, because last year I was with the Ferry Hawks and Independent Ball, and we didn't have anything like that. And I kept saying, we need a booster club. And we actually had only 3 people that I could count on, and named them we were the Ferry Hawks. I named them the Fairy Godmothers. And, you know, they helped out in every single way, whether the guys needed, you know, help paying for a hotel room, whether they bought energy drinks for the locker room, coolers to take on 13-hour bus rides so that we had cold drinks throughout the bus ride. Those things are so key as you're coming up in the minor leagues, and you know, you always want to pay it back when you get to that major league level. And so I definitely, you guys know how I feel about you. Anytime I have a chance to represent and be there with you guys, I always make my presence known, and thank you guys for all your support.
You know, Ryan, before we go, I have to tell you a story that stuck with me for years. And this is 20 years ago, Mark, it had to be something. We had our kids, over 20, we had our kids in a baseball camp out of Long Island, run by a guy named Sal Agostinelli. I guess it ties to the Phillies. And you came out on an off day, and you talked to the kids, and they came home with a ball that you signed. I think we still have it somewhere, you know, in their bedroom, which we haven't gotten rid of most of the stuff yet. And they talked about that for days and weeks. So how does it make you feel to know that when you come out and you take an off day, when you really rather be doing something else, and you go out and you talk to kids, and that sticks?
You know what? I think, Ari, the thing for me, man, I always thought about the fans. You know, I come up from a small town in the country. And, you know, kind of like what Figgy was saying, when I told my grandfather one day, he took me to a Baltimore Orioles baseball game, the only major league game I'd ever gone to in my life. And we sat in like the seats. We were so high, old Memorial Stadium, you could touch the landing gear when it was coming, when the planes were flying into BWI. And I remember I had a ball, and he said, go down and get it signed by one of the players. And so I had to hustle my way down to the dugout, and figure you'll like this story. And I saw a guy just stretching out on the field, and Baltimore was playing Cleveland, the Cleveland Indians, and it was Candy Maldonado. And Candy was stretching, and I asked him for an autograph, and Candy came over and he signed my ball. And I had this big old fluffy afro, curly afro. And I remember like just holding the ball up in the air, and literally walked all the way back to the top of the stands with this ball in the air. My grandfather looked at me, he goes, "You really got it signed, didn't you?" I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "One day I'm going to be down on that field." So fast forward, I get to Puerto Rico to play in San Juan, and guess who one of my coaches is? Candy Maldonado.
Candy Maldonado.
Wow.
And I told him the story, and he almost brought him to tears. He was just like, wow. And then it kind of, it went back into it. So my thing, Ari, to answer your question, I always had this passion for the fans, because you guys pay the salaries. You guys make the game fun, when you're yelling and screaming and good or bad. I mean, I had my good times, the Mets, and I had my bad ones. But all in all, at the end of the day, you guys were always supportive. And I just, whenever I got an opportunity to give back, that's why no matter if I went 0 for 20 or 14 for 20, you never saw me not stop in the parking lot to not sign autographs, because I just felt like I was one of those kids. And so I didn't want to miss a kid. And maybe that was his, like you said, with your kids at that camp. I just felt that way my whole career.
Amazing.
Yeah,
And the interesting, go ahead, Figgy, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say I've always been huge on that. Of course, wearing Met uniform, and I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I want to inspire as many kids as possible to help them realize that it is possible. It's a dream that came true for me, and all it takes is a spark. Someone to take the few seconds to sign an autograph, take a picture. My biggest thing every day of my major league career, I signed for an hour before every game. So after BP, when everybody else went in to eat, I would sign for an hour, and then I would go get myself a quick bite to eat, shower up and change, and get ready for the game. And I felt like, to me, it was my connection with the fans. They may not know who I am. You know how many times I was asked, "Hey, can you take this to David Wright? Hey, could you take this to Carlos Delgado? Hey, can you get somebody else to come out and sign for us? Who are you?" It didn't matter to me, because I said, one day they'll Google it and they'll remember this moment, and that'll mean something to them. I often get approached by people who are like, "You're not going to believe this, but you signed a ball for me, or you took a picture, and they'll show me the picture, and we'll try to recreate the same picture." And of course, we're both older and bigger, so you try to fit in the frame. But it's connecting with the fans. It's something that I've always tried to do, because you want a little bit of that empathy when things are going bad. The boos, you want to make it harder for them to boo you when they're like, "Man, he's a good guy. He had a bad day, but he's a good guy, so we still root for him." So I often tried to do that. And then, of course, the kids in the upper deck, that was me. Like Ryan, we're in the upper deck watching a ball game with our parents or our family. And I never forget that after every time I would play catch, I turn around to give away a ball, and there's all the kids in the front, and I would throw it into the upper deck so a kid in the upper deck could get a ball. I wanted to make sure that somebody up there got a baseball, because first thing he does when he gets there, Dad's like, "Yeah, I'm taking you to a game." He's not telling him he's in the upper deck. He gets in, he's like, "Yeah, I'll never get a baseball." So I always made sure every day I threw balls into the upper deck. In fact, my first pitch that I threw out at Citi Field, I almost chucked it straight into the upper deck. But then, my wife said, "You'll probably never get asked to do it ever again, so don't do that."
It's interesting. Two things that come to mind when you just said that, Figgy. One, when you said, posing for pictures. My nephew went to Brandeis with a friend of yours, and they both went to watch you at a minor league stadium. And I remember sending you that picture of, you guys posing in the minor leagues. But over and above baseball, AJ and I years ago had a boxer on our show. He was a light heavyweight champ for a little while, fought on HBO, a guy named Cletus Selden. And the only reason he became a professional athlete is because Lenny Harris, all-time, threw him a ball at the one Met game he went to, and he thought it was the coolest thing how a professional athlete threw him a ball. He wanted to become a professional athlete. So it's not only just baseball. You never know, you're right, Ryan, what that one little thing is going to plant a seed. All right, so Steve, you have your hand up, so go ahead on mute and ask a question. Go ahead.
All right. Hi. Hey, Figgy.
How are you?
Good to see you. Couple of things, for those watching and maybe haven't had the honor of meeting Figgy in person, what you see is what you get right here. Our first interaction, I won't divulge what happens in the locker room, but let's just say we laughed a lot. And Apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. Figgy Senior is an amazing guy.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed spending time with him as well. And so my first experience, I guess, as a Met fan, I was about 4 years old. So around 1974, my dad took me to the ballpark. I think it was against the Pirates. And I definitely, from what Tully said, it is totally different now. Where there, I was like hanging on, even at 4 years old, I was hanging on everything that was happening. And my dad was explaining to me, everything that happened. And, then I went to Banner Day and, brought my stick, with the sign that I made, have a picture of me with my sisters when I was a kid. Really bad dresser though back then. But yeah, and my dad grew up a Dodger fan and just latched on to the Mets after that. My dad in his older age is definitely more of just a general New York loyalist, so it makes me cringe when he talks about other teams that he watches. But no, that was my story about becoming a Met fan.
Nice. All right, Freedy, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Well, first off, Mark, great job with this forum for the fans to be able to talk to the former players. Hello, Figgy. How you doing?
What's up, Freedy?
All good. I wanted to just pass on. I remember in 1965 going to my first Met game. My father took me and my brother, and walking down the tunnel, and also being from Brooklyn, and going through the tunnel and seeing that green grass for the first time and the way the field was manicured was unbelievable. And my father, being a Brooklyn guy, worked his way down to the field, and my brother and he told me and my brother, go over to the dugout and try and get on the corner there and ask one of the guys for an autograph. So my brother, me being 5 years old, I'm holding my brother's hand, I'm going down there, and my older brother reaches around, and Joe Torre, they were playing the Braves, Joe Torre sticks his head out to talk to my brother. I don't remember. My brother tells the story. And he said to Joe Torre, can you ask Phil Niekro for an autograph? So there you go on one of those, Figgy. And it was just really amazing. But now that I told my story, I'd like to know, Figgy, you and Ryan, who was the best players you've ever played against? Pitchers, hitters, but just the best, and that you just looked at them in awe.
Well, I think for me, it's easy. The best two pitchers and player would be Greg Maddux as a pitcher. For a guy who you would walk past on the street and never think twice that this guy was a major league player, let alone 7-time Cy Young winner. Then you Gold Glover, just an unbelievable athlete, and everything you wanted to be as a pitcher. A guy who could hit the corners at ease and at will, and get out of a jam and never have to break a sweat or 90 miles an hour. So I wasn't a guy who threw 100 miles an hour, so I would have to often work backwards and find weaknesses in every hitter's swing and be a student of the game. So I idolized him more than anybody else. And the hitting side, there's nobody who's ever picked up a bat who's done it better than Bonds. I don't care what anyone says. I will sit here and have a conversation with anyone and everyone who tries to jump at the immediate reaction of, oh, but it was a needle, it was a this, it was a that. The man never failed the drug test. He's been tested more than anybody else in the history of baseball. What he did the year after he hit the 43 home runs is a season that will never, ever, ever be touched, with 120 intentional walks, 232 walks. And yet still batted 360 with 42 home runs and 100 RBIs. So that lets you know he's always been in a class by himself. And to me, there wasn't a better hitter, because you can make mistakes to hitters and maybe they pull the ball foul, maybe they foul it back. But that guy you made a mistake to, and you just didn't get the ball back. It was a souvenir.
My two would be Pedro Martinez
Mm-hmm.
for his stature. He threw
Mhm.
95, 96, but his changeup was probably what, Vicky, 80, 79.
Yeah.
You mentally couldn't even slow you. It was just, and his curveball wasn't even that good, but his
Right.
changeup was so great. And he threw like he was 6'4", 240, and he was about 5'8", about 140. And he was the most intimidating little creature on that mound that you could ever go up against. I mean, the guy was just a very dominant pitcher in that era. But just to Figgy sentiments, Barry was the best hitter. Look, I'll tell you a quick story. So we're 94 Mets, and we're playing in San Francisco. You guys probably remember this. Remember, Saberhagen was having one of his best years that year, remember? And I'm playing center field in San Francisco, and Saberhagen is just at his best. He throws the first pitch. It's about an inch off the corner, and Barry takes it, calls it a ball. The next pitch he threw him, it was inside, missed about it. It didn't miss much, called it a ball. Brett Saberhagen threw the third pitch it caught about a half an inch of the plate on the inside, and Barry deposited it in the upper deck in the candlestick. Hold on, it gets better. So his next at bat, the very first pitch, Saberhagen throws him a 96-mile-an-hour fastball on the outside corner. He deposited in the left center field bleachers. I mean, it was just, and then at that point, I'm just in center field, just in amazement. Then it gets even better. I'm with the Astros, and we come in for our hitting meetings. You know, pitchers, hitters, and everybody comes in. So you've got Shane Reynolds, Mike Hampton, Roy Oswald. You know, you got the who's who, right? So we're going through the whole shenanigans of how we're gonna, play this hitter, how we're gonna pitch to this hitter. So we all come up to Barry Bonds, and I remember Bagwell and Biggio turned around and said, "Yo, you're gonna need some golden cleats this series." And so we get through all the guys. Hampton, I'm walking him if he's an open base. Shane Reynolds, I'm walking him if it's an open base. We get to Roy Oswald. Roy goes, that's the year he won, 18, 20 games? And Roy goes with his big dip in his mouth, spitting in his cup. He goes, "Well, I'm going to pitch to the SOB." And, he goes on this, that, and the third. So that was Sunday's game. So just to give you some insight on how good of a hitter this guy was. He, in the hitting chart, had 11 strikes. Think about this, guys. 11 strikes. He had 7 hits. He had 3 home runs, 3 doubles, and a single.
Wow.
11 strikes, and he only swung at 7 pitches. 3 home runs, 3 doubles, and a single. And the single was a laser that almost went through the left field wall. And guess who 2 of the home runs were off of?
Oswald.
Roy Oswald. On the sunny day game.
Be careful what you wish for.
I'm telling you, I'd never seen anything. And I know everybody talks about the guy, and like Figgy said, with the whole, there's never been a hitter. Griffey was good. There have been some good hitters, but there has been nobody close to that guy and what he was able to do as a player. You think about it, guys. In the game of baseball, it truly, you don't see a LeBron, Jordan type. It's, you get a no-hitter every blue moon, but you don't see a offensive player that you're like, you plan your game plan around him. Like, you don't, like, this guy comes up and the bases are loaded and it's late in the game. Look, we might just walk him. This might walk in a run. I mean, you don't see players like that. And he was one of those guys in that generation that was absolutely, it's hard to put in words what he was like. To play against him, to see his hand, just his plate recognition, his pitch recognition was just unbelievable.
Yeah, he was so special. We sit here, like you said, you're comparing the guys of this day. You're like, is Trout the best player of all time? At least of this generation, right? You're sitting there, you're going Trout, and you're going to. There's no comparison for Barry Bonds throughout his career, and then you go and put him against the all-time greats. There still is no comparison.
He's got more intentional walks in some organizations.
Yes, the Tampa Bay Rays. I remember that.
A couple of in Detroit too.
He is. So my story, real quick, Bonds. I'm a rookie, and I tell Larry Boa, as I'm getting ready for the game, I said, I've got one thing. I go, I'm not walking him. And he goes, well, don't make me have to. And I go, all right. And he goes, you stay ahead of him. You get to continue attacking him. He goes, you fall behind. We're putting him on. And I go, no problem. So I went with my attack mode was different than most. Like I said, I pitched backwards a lot, meaning I use slow breaking balls to get ahead because nobody wants to swing at a slow big curveball and pop out. They don't want to piss themselves off. They're trying to get to my fastball, which was a manageable fastball. So I first at bat, I go right after Bonds. I get ahead of him and I start nibbling at the corners. And Todd Pratt is the catcher. Pratt tells me fastball inside on a 2-2 pitch. And I go fastball inside. Now we're in the Pac Bell or AT&T Park, whatever it is now, out in San Francisco, the new one. And I throw the fastball about a good 6 inches off the plate inside. He turns on it and hits it in the upper deck, but before the dugout. So like where the on deck circle is, he hits it up that far. So he turns on it that quickly. And I'm like, my eyes just get real big. And I look at Todd Pratt while everybody else is like regathering what had just happened. And I'm shaking my head at Todd Pratt like, no, we're not doing that again. So I throw him a split finger. We're on 3-2, barely goes below his knees. He starts taking off the stuff and he gets the walk. And I kind of hit my glove like, damn, I could have got that call. But I'm a rookie. I know I wasn't going to get it. Todd Pratt yells, "No, Figgy!" I'm like, "Oh boy, here we go." I'm pissing off Todd Pratt. This isn't good.
Hey, he
second
told
at bat.
Yeah,
So second at bat, I have him again. I get him in a 1-2 count this time. Same kind of formula: go slow, elevate, and I throw a 2-seamer this time instead of a 4-seamer inside, and it freezes him because he thinks it's going to be in, and it catches the corner, and I strike him out. I slap my glove and I let out a woo. And I'm like, look, you thought I won the World Series. Funniest thing ever. Todd Pratt yells at me again, and I put my head down and I walk around the mound. I'm like, oh my God, I just struck out Barry Bonds. Third at bat comes. I get him. I'm behind in the count this time. I'm like, let me just pop one in there real quick, get him off the plate. Yeah, like I said, McCovey Cove, about 427 feet. And so I got him, and then he got me back right away. But the difference is his changed the score of the game. Mine was just a strikeout.
Figgy, he told Doc that same series in San Francisco when he did that to Saberhagen. The next day, we're out stretching and they're finishing up batting practice, and he comes over to the sidelines because he and Bobby Bowe were good friends,
right?
And so he's coming over talking to Bobby Bowe, and Doc happens to be coming out, and he goes, "Hey, Doc, you still throw 97? Because you don't throw 97. That curveball's some junk now." So he was talking trash to Doc.
Mm-hmm.
And so Doc just looked at him. Doc said, "I'll just hit you in your head, baby. That's all." So fast forward to the next game, Doc's pitching. First at bat, Doc throws straight at his dome. Knocks Barry on the ground. Barry gets up, kind of smirks at him. They look at each other. The very next pitch, Doc tries to fool him with a lazy curveball. And he hit it. It's probably still traveling. He hit it so far, and he just ran around the bases with this snicker on his face. Very next at bat, you guys already know what happened. Stuck it right in the rib cage. It's on. You can Google that too. It's funny too. It was just so Barry Bonds. Wasn't the most liked guy, but he was definitely one of the greatest to ever swing a bat. That's for sure.
Yes, sir.
All right, we got a couple more questions, and I don't want to keep you guys much longer. Really appreciate the time tonight. So Noah, go ahead, unmute yourself and ask away. Noah, obviously part of the KINER'S team. Go ahead, Noah.
Hey guys, it's nice to kind of meet you, not in person, but of course, virtually. I guess my Mets experience, my first real Mets experience, I guess I could say, was I was down by the dugout, and before the game, kind of what Figgy said he did, Terry Collins would stand behind the dugout and talk to some of the kids. The kids would go up, ask him for a signature, and I went up to Terry Collins and asked him for a signature, and I can't remember, I talked to him for like 2 minutes, and that was like the greatest moment of my life. Like, I'll never forget it. It was so happy. Terry was such a great guy, and his engagement with the fans really made me think, okay, these Mets, they're amazing. They love their fans. They really love their fan base, especially their younger fan base, and they really want to spread the game of baseball. So that's kind of my memory. You know, of course, it stuck with me for a long time. I was probably 10 years old when that happened. So really stuck with me. But this question goes for both you, Figgy, and Mr. Thompson. What's the most memorable stadium or ballpark any of you guys played at? What kind of sticks with you? What was the most electric? What was the most, memorable just for you guys?
Wrigley Field was unique in itself. The Ivy, I mean, it was unique. The most electric, that it's, you can't really pinpoint. I don't really have a stadium because I've had so many. From Shea Stadium used to rock when we won. I mean, that place was phenomenal. The Philly Veteran Stadium, they were insane. But I would say they were absolutely insane. But I would definitely say Wrigley Field was probably the most unique place to play for me.
Yeah, I think for me, when you talk about the most electric, those always come in waves, right? Depending on if you're home or away, how the fan base is, what time of year it is. You know about going into Philly. It's going to be, you're going to have to deal with the fans, and they're not going to be they're very unruly as they booed Santa Claus down in Philly. So you know about them. I think for me, playing in Shea and getting to play in the new City Field, there was a definite transition. I was very fortunate. I got to play in a lot of older stadiums, and then the transition to the newer stadiums. Me and Ryan can talk about this one real quick. I'll give you a stadium that didn't live up to the hype in Milwaukee, where the roof didn't open properly. Okay, and it was the first one with a retractable roof like that, and everybody thought it was the greatest thing ever, except for everybody who had to experience it every day. So we'd go out for BP, and they would have to start, opening it up, and it would go like in sections slowly, and you could hear it grinding and winding, and it would get stuck, but it would power through and let out this hellacious bang noise, and it would scare the bejesus out of everybody. So that was one part of it. The other part of it was when it rained right behind the mound. The rain would fall right behind the mound, and it would fall in the owner's box seats right next to the dugout. So he couldn't even sit in his own seats when it would rain. And that was just like a sign of things to come for the poor Milwaukee Brewers for a while we were there. So that was a different thing with the stadium. I think, fan base makes it part of the experience of the stadium. So when I was with Pittsburgh for 2 years, it was a beautiful ballpark. I mean, that PNC is some kind of special. And the fans, what was funny was that while I was there, they had a bobblehead night of Charlie Brown in his famous yellow and black T-shirt because it was Pirates color. And they were known as the lovable losers because it was 10 straight seasons of not finishing 500. And the fans were okay with it. They celebrated it. We were their players still. We were their franchise, and they supported us. They came out. Unlike Milwaukee, where they got a new stadium and they only had like 17,000 fans. Pittsburgh crowds used to be full, no matter what, win, lose, or draw. The fans always came out.
Awesome. All right, we have a few more questions in the room, so we'll go to Michael and then Barry, and we'll wrap it up. So, Michael, go ahead.
All right, real quick. So my origin story with the Mets, my father was obviously a Brooklyn Dodger fan, grew up in Brooklyn. So I was born into the Mets because he waited until there was a National League team that came back to New York, and that was the team we rooted for. And that's how I became a diehard Mets fan. My question, I figure you asked me something because you're mute. I can't hear you if you are.
Sorry about that, Mike. Go ahead.
So my question first is for Ryan, and then Figgy right after. So I had the pleasure of getting into the cages with Figgy, and he was throwing Figgy 80 plus miles an hour in the cages at the time, something like that.
Well, I mean, I was also about 50 feet, so yeah.
Well, be that as it may. I knew that if I didn't start my swing the minute that ball was up at the height, I was done. I think that actually was one pitch. It had smacked into the catcher's glove and I swung at it. So my question for Ryan is, Ryan, when you get up to bat against a flamethrower, are you thinking in your head what pitch you want to see, and are you expecting that pitch when you're at bat? I'm not short of saying are you guessing, but are you expecting a certain pitch when you get up there, such as you're saying in your head, he's going to throw me a fastball, I'm going to get ready for a fastball. And Figgy, on the other side of the coin, are you thinking, yeah, this guy's waiting for a fastball, I'm throwing him a slider? Ryan,
Well,
you first, and then Figgy
for a hitter, as you guys know, I swung a lot. And I always went up looking for a fastball. I don't care if you're throwing 120 or 105 or 85. It didn't matter. I always went up looking for a fastball and try to adjust to anything slow. As a hitter, if you go up there looking for a breaking ball or changeup and some guy throws you an 88-mile-an-hour fastball, that's just a wasted pitch for a hitter and a wasted at bat. So the number one rule for a hitter is always go sit on the number one, and he gives you a good fastball, be ready to hit it at all times.
Yeah. Now the other side for me is whenever they're looking for A, B, and C, I try to give them X, Y, and Z. That was always my thing. So if it's a hitter's count and we're in Wrigley and the wind's blowing out, everybody would always ask me, what do you think about Wrigley? Small ballpark. Oh, and when the wind blows out, I go, I love pitching in Wrigley when the wind's blowing out because the hitters are extra aggressive. They're trying to overswing, and I would take advantage of that because it would make my curveball, a little bit slower with a little sharper breaks. The wind blowing in my face actually helped me in the movement of my pitches. So where these guys are swinging, they're looking for the fastball. Like he said, they're looking to take me deep. Well, I might have to throw 6 or 7 changeups in a row, but I'll get some weak swings and some weak contact and get some outs. And next thing I know, it pops up and I'm in the 6th inning and, I haven't given up many runs and I'm having a great game. So I think
you
that's
would
the
do
beauty
that too, you would throw 5 changeups in a row.
That's the beauty of the game is that there's no set rules to what has to happen. And for a hitter, they got to be prepared for the fastball. That's the reason that they're playing Major League Baseball, because they can hit a fastball. Hitting sliders is very, very difficult, but knowing how to lay off of sliders or knowing when to be able to just foul off a good slider and then be ready for that next fastball. The game today, you see these velocities where every guy, we were talking about the other day, there were 300 pitches thrown at least 99 miles an hour one night. We saw it in the database. 300 pitches thrown over 99 miles an hour one night. And you're sitting here going, well, if Jacob deGrom started, that's 80 fastballs of Jacob deGrom's right there. That's one guy. But everybody has at least 3 guys on their staff that throw 100 or more. And this has never been, this is a revelation in baseball. And I know that they're clocking it from a different distance. They're clocking it from 55 feet rather than 60 feet, 6 inches now. So that helps with the big increase. It's not like all of a sudden a whole generation of baseball players learned how to throw 100. That's why Jacob deGrom himself went from throwing 96 to 98 to all of a sudden he's sitting at 100 and hitting 102. There's no secret formula that no secret workout that he's done. It's just they're measuring it from a different distance. They're more accurate now, the way it's coming out of his hand rather than the way it slows down at the plate. Having said that, that's the beauty of the chess game of baseball. You're always going to see that. And I think what has gotten lost, because everything is trying to make these guys react to fast and sharp and short movements. So you're seeing a lot of cutters, a lot of sliders, and a lot of fastballs. 2-pitch pitchers, high spin rate, so elevating with a fastball and then being able to throw a breaking ball that guys will swing and miss at because they don't care about striking out anymore. On the flip side, as a pitcher, like being able to change speeds, being able to slow a hitter down, being able to throw something, that gains you a few miles an hour the next time you face them because their fastball is a little bit faster. I think that's something that's lost in the game that I would love to see come back. And I think you see certain staffs like the Astros were hell-bent on throwing a lot of curveballs. most of their starters throw a ton of curveballs, even their relievers. Look at the back end guys, Presley and McCullers. They throw a ton of curveballs, not necessarily sliders, because it's so different. It's such a different thing to do. But I think that's always going to be the game inside the game. And as a real fan, you're kind of looking for those things rather than just the outcome.
It's funny that Michael says that he got a chance to get in the cage against you. I did also in the pro game, but my first pro game ever, I got to hit against Ricky Bonas, and Ricky threw a fastball, and I wouldn't even say a day late. I was probably 3 days late and probably $20 short. But I figured, all right, he's coming back with the next fastball, and I fouled it off. I'm psyched now. All right, I timed it. I got a piece of it. I'm waiting now, and I'm so anxious. All of a sudden, the ball is coming right at my head. Right at my head. I bail. That thing just drops right into Todd Pratt's glove. The umpire rings me up. Lenny Harris puts his glove at third base, just cracking up. And he goes, now you got something to talk about on the radio, huh? So that is definitely my memory of getting in the cage against a major leaguer. But Barry's got his hand raised. We'll go to Barry, and then we'll put a wrap on tonight. So, Barry, you got the last question. Go ahead. Barry, there?
You're still muted.
Thanks, guys. We're here.
All
We are
right,
here.
yeah.
I'm actually here with my 9-year-old who's been listening to this entire show, and we're so happy, really, that you guys have agreed to do this, Figgy and Ryan. Jared is 9 years old. He's been a Met fan since day one. Quite honestly, he didn't have the chance to be any other type of fan but a Met fan. I became a Met fan in the early 70s because I hated everything Yankees. And then Kingman came along, and it was solidified why I became a Met fan. Jared received a new T-shirt today that says, you got to believe in Uncle Steve, which leads me to my question for the former major leaguers here. What do you guys think about Shohei? Have you ever seen anything like it?
He's everything I ever wanted to be.
Yeah.
You just don't get the chance. As you come up through the minor leagues and pro ball, you get to start hitting at AA is what it used to be when we had, hitting pitchers. So you start to hit at AA. And so anything that you thought you knew about hitting from high school, I went to college 3 years. I lost all feeling of how to, really hit. For me, it was more about not embarrassing myself and just making contact. And I turn around and see this guy who's hitting 40 home runs and then getting on the mound and just, being a Cy Young caliber type pitcher. He's a very special talent. That's generational type talent. And I think, could there have been more guys like that? I think there was a guy with us in Milwaukee, Brooks Kieschnick.
Brooke Kieschnick, yeah.
He was a closer type
he could throw
guy.
even 95, 94.
In 95, he came in as like a closer, and he would warm up in the right field with the ball boy. It was a ball girl until he had to warm up, and then he'd go over there. That's an awesome shirt. Then he'd go
Doc
over there
was
and
like
warm
that.
up the catcher. Yep. And Doc, yes, absolutely. So there are athletes that maybe could have done some things that would have been remarkable. But for a guy to just come into the league and do what he's done, that's pretty special. I mean, he got to do it at least in Japan a little bit. So like I said, he went through his whole high school career and then pitching over there in Japan. So he's been hitting the whole time. And he got so much better in that first year when he removed the high leg kick that he had. Japanese style hitters always had that high leg kick, and he changed that high leg kick to just kind of a coil and just not even a toe tap, but just like moving his toe backwards, kind of like Starling Marte does. And once he did that, it was a short, quick stroke to the ball. And you're looking at a guy who's averaging over 110 miles an hour in every ball he touches, which is scary to think about.
Figgy, you got one eye on the WBC?
Yes, I do.
He's got both eyes.
No. I've been roaming back and forth. 4-1 right now for the good guys. So
anyway, thanks a lot, guys, thank you for letting us be a part of this. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us, Barry. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Guys, so all right. We appreciate everyone was on tonight. We didn't even get to everyone's fandom. We might save that for another day because everything else was just so fascinating. This is what we want to be. Listen, we're already up to 700 people on the page. We just started this last month. Get the word out. We hope to grow this. We'll be on probably every Monday, it looks like, talking about the series that just ended and the upcoming series. We hope to have guys rotating in and out. obviously on that page. You got guys, tons of Mets are on that page. They've been chiming in. Guys that we haven't heard from in a long time, guys like Bruce Bereni, Ryan Thompson's on that page. Figgy's got to join that page. But we really appreciate Figgy as always. AJ and I are definitely going to see you at a lot of Ducks games this season for sure as well. Got to see you there at the Ferry Hawk, so we're looking forward to it. And we know we got some loyal guys. Steve, he's 3 for 3. He's the Cal Ripken of the fans right now, and Tully is he missed one, but he's 2 out of 3. So we appreciate Freedy, first time, long time tonight as well. So there we go. Thanks everyone. We really are excited about this project. We want to keep it going, and it's you guys that are going to really make this work for us. So thanks for everyone tuning in. Lots of stuff you could be watching. We really appreciate you taking the time to watch us. So Ryan, thanks for popping in too, man.
Anytime, man. Anytime.
Nice job, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Go enjoy the rest of your game, Biggie. Good night, everyone.
I will. Take care, guys.
AJ.
Good night,
Noah.
everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night.
Bye-bye.